between deliciously dark romance and yikes. And what happens when your brooding book boyfriend crosses it? Zade Meadows, Zayden Riorson, that guy from the Twisted series, Alex Volkov. They've all had us questioning our sanity, our ability to even enjoy these books, and wondering what the heck is wrong with us. So it's only fair that we sit down to discuss what works in dark romance and what actually crosses the lines, plus some recs that actually deliver. Welcome back to the Rationally Insane podcast. I'm Rachel Oak. This is the place for book chaos and thoughtful critique, and the funky good times. Today we're unpacking when dark romance is actually problematic versus when it's just morally messy fun because we deserve it. And yes, I will be naming names, but this isn't about dragging authors, it's about the way the characters and the dynamics are framed. I feel like we've lost a lot of the nuance here, and I want to make that very clear. I have nothing against these authors. The reason these books have become so popular in the first place is because the authors have spent so long making them entertaining, to the point where even an hate read is fun. And just because I disagree with some of the characters' choices and actions, male or female, it doesn't mean that I'm dissing the author or dissing the work in any way. Both critical thinking and fangirling will be present, so sit back, relax, and let's get down to it. First things first, we need to define the difference between dark romance, morally grey, and morally beige. That is absolutely essential to put this episode into context. I feel like now that the dark romance genre has become so popular on BookTok, we've lost touch on the fine line that defines these things, and a lot of dark romance has been diluted, with some guys who are just brooding and wear leather jackets suddenly hailed as the heroes of dark romance when they've actually done nothing to deserve that. First things first. What I define by dark romance is when the characters and the situations that they've met under and the situations in which they interact are actually questionable. It's not so much about the characters themselves, but the way they interact with each other. Perfect example of this would be something like God of War by Rena Kent. Not to give too many spoilers, these characters meet. The female main character has a form of amnesia, while the male main character purposefully hides information from her in order to continue their relationship together. As you can imagine, the entire context of their relationship is considered dark romance because it would not fly by society's standards and it makes us all raise a couple of eyebrows. Same way if there was a forced marriage trope in a mafia romance. Whereas morally grey comes down to the characters themselves, the choices and the ethical reasons on why they make those choices. Just because you have a more grey character or a morally black character does not mean that you're reading a dark romance. You can have morally grey or morally black characters in romance books and the book itself not be considered a dark romance. I know I'm taking this very seriously, but this is a genre that I love so much and I read so much of it that when I'm recommended a dark romance book and there is no actual dark romance in it, I get quite upset. Which brings us to the morally beige guy, who, let's just put it out there, the Twisted series is a perfectly example of. The vast majority of these guys are doing nothing wrong. Are they like mildly stalkerish for like 2 chapters? Sure, but they're not doing anything that would actually be that questionable. They're not breaking the law by means, and all that they do is easily justifiable by their love, and you can understand why they make the choices that they make. So for me, it really lacks the gut punch. There is no, oh my god moment. These guys would not stand against the Legacy of God series, the Royals of Forsyth, you guys. Like, they would be eaten alive in 0.5 seconds flat. They cannot comprehend the level of messed up you have to stoop to in order to do some of these things. Which brings me to examples of when problematic tropes work. As in, when dark romance actually works for me and delivers what I want it to deliver. Number one is when the villains are framed as villains. If you're giving me a bad guy, give me a bad guy. Go balls to the walls here. Don't try to justify every wrong action straight off the bat. I'd rather question why these people are doing awful things than be given it straight off the bat. Make me question my own morals. Make me doubt why I'm even defending these people in the first place. And let a bad guy just be a bad guy. There's nothing wrong with that. anything, the whole reading experience much more enjoyable and makes the universe feel more realistic. In real life, some people just suck. Not everyone gets a redemption arc, but obviously, if you want me to root for your MMC and your FMC together, both of them are equally flawed and villainous, both of them are equally murderous, and both of them make awful decisions, or make sure that if you're giving us a soft little FMC, I don't think there's anything more frustrating than having a guy do awful, despicable things against someone that did nothing, that's basically raised on sunshine and roses, and all of their terrible actions being brushed under the rug without any decent groveling on their part. Show me that this person has grown. Address that there's a toxic dynamic in place here. The other side of it is if you have a guy who's just an awful human being with no justification for it, no redemption arc of any kind, and we're all just saying, yep, he's the guy for me, then we cross the line of, no, it's not just fiction, it's just wrong, and it's sending all kinds of awful messages. It's something that I mentioned in my bully romance podcast. That dynamic of, you hurt me because you love me, is old, outdated, and we're done with it. I think there's a difference between reader consent in fiction and character consent in the story. Here's what I mean by this. I can understand why a character makes certain actions within the context of the story. The framing really matters here. A good book gives you an insight into the characters themselves, why they did the things they did, and their motivations behind it. So understanding why a morally black guy does something awful towards romantic interest and saying, yeah, it makes sense that she'd forgive him, is completely different than saying, I as a reader completely agree with everything that's going on here. That is not the case. We're just saying, with all things considered, it makes sense for characters to act this way. A really good example of this is the book Too Sweet by Dice. I did a whole video on this, and a lot of people didn't understand how I could possibly be defending the male main character Nico. Because the female character Mia gets assaulted, and he assumes that she basically asked for it, and in a really awful way confronts her and basically saying she was asking to be assaulted, which, as you can imagine, is completely wrong, and nobody would ever defend that in a real life scenario. However, within the context of the story, the reason he feels this way is because he had a really toxic ex that would purposely put herself in really awful situations to make sure he would play the knight in shining armor. And he fell for it again and again and again because she was manipulative and a really toxic person. So within the context of the story, when he sees this scenario replay in front of his eyes, he makes that quick assumption. Again, as a reader, we can understand why he acted the way he acted, and at the same time say, this would never fly in real life, and I would never forgive anybody that it would assume that a girl was asking to be assaulted. Right. Okay, clearing that off, we also really want a lot of ethical tension to come out in dark romance. We want to feel bad for rooting for these people. Don't give us an easy answer or an easy way out. There's nothing more exciting, for me at least, than reading a dark romance book and questioning, what the heck am I doing here? Laughing at some situations that are so completely preposterous and out of the human realm that you can't help but text your entire group chat and say, you cannot believe what he did. Or consult the invisible support group while staring at the wall and saying, oh no, he didn't. Like, even just saying that out loud, I'm already giggling. But let's not forget, it's quite easy to trip into yikes territory. As in, if this happened in real life, we need to call HR ASAP. Meet Zade Meadows from the book Haunting Adeline. Unless you've been living under a rock, this fella does things that I cannot even begin to say out loud. There is not enough euphemisms for me to explain the amount of laws this man breaks. Laws of time, laws of space, laws that I don't think have even been invented yet, but he sure makes it feel like they should be illegal. Amongst the many things, this man is the poster child for stalker. He physically assaults the female character, completely disregards the word no, and physically members a man. It just keeps going and going and going. And a lot of people jump up and say, it's just fiction. Just because I like this book doesn't mean anything. I'm like, child, I'ma hold your hand and cover my drink when I say this. Just fiction is not enough defense here. This behavior is a downright felony. And I don't know why this book is framing it as romantic. There is nothing romantic about the way this man acts. He does not defend her because he likes her. He's not protective because he's fallen into some kind of insta-love. If anything, it's insta-lust. He immediately starts by talking about how hot this girl is. And this is made to make me swoon. This girl is quite clearly losing her mind, living in a new place, trying to come to terms with the twists and turns that life has thrown her. And this guy's like, do you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna make life worse for her. I'm gonna start stalking her, showing up in her bedroom. And it's not just Zade. If you're an avid dark romance reader, you've probably seen this play out a lot. Behaviors that are meant to be framed as romantic and loving, but when you dig into it a little bit, just like a little bit of critical thinking, you realize there's nothing regarding love about it. It all revolves around the male character's need to control. And it quite quickly veers into them controlling every aspect of their beloved's life. Who they can hang out with, what they can wear, what they can say, completely isolating them from the outside world, forcing them out of apartments and jobs just because they disagree with it. And it's always framed as they're just trying to keep them safe. But if you take 2 hot minutes to read through it, you realize, no, it's not. They just want them for themselves. A great example of this is the book The Pucking Wrong Number. In fact, the vast majority of the books in the Pucking Wrong series feature dark romance male characters who are incredibly controlling. It's not about being obsessive, possessive, or anything like that. They are simply controlling, and they have an insane amount of power over the female characters. All of our hockey players with millions in salaries, while the vast majority of the female main characters in these series are scraping by, struggling to make rent. They're quite easily influenced by these guys. And if we completely ignore this massive power imbalance, then dark romance quite easily veers into propaganda, into just let a guy take control of everything for you. It's so much easier. You don't need to think, you don't need to be your own person. It is so much harder to do any of those things. And suddenly, that's how you end up with women who can't pay a goddamn bill or see an issue with their boyfriend dictating whether they can go out with their friends for coffee or take a holiday without them. Like, if you're locking your girlfriend in a basement for 5 days, that's not brooding, it's a crime scene. Which feels so odd that I even have to say this out loud. But we've taken dark romance to such an extreme that this is a necessary point to make. Meanwhile, you have the complete opposite happening at the same time, this morally beige pipeline. Because dark romance became so popular, suddenly publishers like, we want more books like this. We know that they're selling, so they greenlit a bunch of romances that they felt were dark-ish. It's like going true dark is too much, so they try to find some way for it to be more palatable and marketable to the masses, and being able to put this in front of a bookstore without having to hide it away in the 18 plus section. Even though some of these books really are 18 plus and should be marketed as such, not as high school romances or like, no, this doesn't belong here. And in this search to make it available to the most amount of people possible and make as much bang for your buck as you possibly can, we've turned these guilty pleasure books into something that is safe and filtered and ultimately feels entirely unsatisfying and leaves nobody happy. People who don't like dark romance think these books are too dark, and people who do like their romances a lot edgier feel completely bored. It plays well online. You can take a couple of sentences and paragraphs, make a couple of viral videos, and tease just enough of the audience that they will buy. But when you actually read it, there's no emotional impact. There is no gut punch, no twisted little stomach bug. And suddenly, the reader expectations are at an all-time high because of the marketing promises that were made, which makes it all the worst when people actually pick up this book that was talked about so highly and feel cheated from it. I talk a lot more in depth about the problem with current day book marketing on social media and whether or not you can still trust book reviews on last week's podcast episode, so go listen to that if you're into it. But right now, the fact is, you're seeing this play out in dark romance more than any other genre, I would say. For example, the Twisted series by Anna Huang. I know I've mentioned this series a lot, but it was one of the first examples of me being truly let down by a book. I was told over and over again, oh my god, if you love Rena Kent, you're gonna love this. If you love Penelope Douglas, this is so for you. And I sit down reading these books and I'm like, where is the dark romance? I was bored. If this was sold to me as a plain contemporary romance, I would have not batted an eyelash. I would have probably severely enjoyed these books and recommended it to other people. But because the entirety of social media told me this was going to be dark, that these men were doing wrong things, that they were the poster child for broody and moody and sexy, I came in with an expectation that completely failed to deliver. And what's worse is the people were coming to this conclusion and selling these books in this way basically by taking a couple of paragraphs out of complete context and making it sound a lot darker. I felt tricked. The vast majority does feel tricked, and if you go look at some of the Goodreads reviews of people who naturally enjoy dark romance, this book does not even make a blip on their radar. I cannot tell you the context of any of the stories beyond the first book because that's how little of an impact they made. Now, I can't just sit here and be like, wah, nothing is right. Dark romance isn't really dark or it's too dark, without giving you examples of books that I feel did the morally gray right. As in, the morally gray feels morally gray and will actually make you question what the heck you're doing. And the number one character that I hail over and over and over again is Milo from Judge's Mercy. I will leave the link to the book in the show notes because it is absolutely delicious. And I wanted to start by suggesting this as a female character. I feel like female characters are hardly ever the morally gray or morally black characters in dark romance. But Mila, she took her personality, she ran with it. This girl has been through some of the most horrific things that you could ever consider. She has been lied to, cheated, and tricked her entire life, and always hailed in comparison to her sister because her sister had it worse. So not only is she going through horrific things, she's not allowed to completely process them, which leads her to make some really bad decisions, hurt people, be downright murderous. And you know what? I respect her for it. She can take my money. You understand throughout the entire book series and her own book why she does the things that she does, why she acts the way that she does. And you understand why Judge, the male love interest, accepts it and even welcomes her energy, and at times even tries to change her and steer her in other directions. Their entire chemistry makes sense. Mila is morally gray and justifiably so. And the second example of dark romance that I have for you is one where the context of the relationship is a true dark romance. Now, everyone's gonna agree with me. I've read the Goodreads reviews, but if you like dark romance, please, okay? Devil Incarnate is one of the best books. I don't usually like dark romance books set in a school setting, especially young teens. I find that is not the right place. It just stirs up a lot of questions within me. But in this example, it makes perfect sense why these characters had to be placed in this environment. Specifically, Heston, you have the entire book series leading up to Heston's book. He is fully hailed as a villain. There is no question in your mind that this guy does not deserve redemption. He is horrible. He's hurt people. You do not want to root for him. So when you read his books and you suddenly start to feel that tingling in your belly, that questioning glance of, oh no, I actually like him. Oh no, I'm starting to understand why he acted the way he acted. That feels so wrong, but oh so right. Like, I would not trust this guy to look after my cactus. That is how bad his character is portrayed. I would not be left alone in a room with him. Get him out of my sight. Or so I thought, because when we actually get to his book, Devil Incarnate, we start to understand why he treats his love interest the way that he does. Now, his love interest, Georgia, also acts in a way that a lot of people would deem irresponsible, wrong, yada yada yada. But that is what makes the two of them so perfect for each other and such a perfect example of dark romance gone right. There's a reason why these characters are paired. Their personalities and their lived experiences make perfect sense. And I really want to stress something here. When I'm talking about good books and bad books and blah, I'm not like banning or policing fiction. These are fictional characters. I don't care what you enjoy personally. I'm just trying to deliver a critique on the tension that readers actually came for, what they actually wanted in the first place. And I can deliver that as someone who absolutely loves dark romance and has read enough to make a critical assessment of all of these books. And you don't have to agree with me either. You can think that Haunting Adeline should be burned at the stake. That's your opinion. But ultimately, and I have to remind myself of this as well, let's take a chill pill. These are works of art. They're not hurting anyone physically. The authors didn't burn down an orphanage. They just wrote shit. If you've got some trope that you're thinking, wait, is this too far? Feel free to DM me. Instagram at the author age is open and at the ready, and I would be happy to dissect any single trope that you have in mind that is making you question your own sanity. Ultimately, fiction can be as wild as we want, but when we pretend that the wild parts are healthy love, we lose what makes dark romance so powerful. It's an escape. It's not real. Enjoy it. Don't hold it to a threshold that you would a regular person. But also keep in mind, these aren't real relationships occurring in front of you. And these are not how real relationships should play out. You deserve kind, nurturing, respectful love and someone who takes care of you and treats you nicely without you questioning if they're going to handcuff you to a bed and not in the fun way. That's it for today. Don't forget to check out my Substack if you want more dark romance recommendations. I'll see you next week.